Joining us now to discuss is one of the authors of that opinion piece, Congressman Khanna of California. Sir, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I want to start with something you wrote in the op-ed, that withdrawing troops will allow for a refocus on diplomacy. Congressman, respectfully, is there really room for diplomacy with the Taliban?
Well, we have to have some solution to peace. The intelligence agencies have told us that our troops are at risk. The Taliban has threatened to take action if we don't withdraw our troops. And if we don't stay there, we're going to continue to have conflict and war. That's why President Biden took the courageous decision to withdraw, recognizing, though, that we have economic tools, we have sanctions, and we can keep regional assets to make it clear to the Taliban that they cannot harbor terrorists, and to make it clear that we reserve the right to take future military action if our homeland is ever a threat.
You mentioned sanctions and the ability to get regional actors to intervene. I assume you mean places like Pakistan. What incentive really does the Taliban have ultimately, though, to keep the peace?
Well, first, they've seen what the United States can do. Let's remember, we won the war for our original mission. We destroyed al-Qaeda, we caught bin Laden, and their country has been ravaged for 20 years. So the last thing they want is to do something that is going to trigger the United States to have further strikes or further military action. And we've made it very clear, the president will make it very clear in withdrawing. There is zero tolerance for them to harbor terrorists that could threaten the United States homeland or our interests. And my understanding is the administration will look to regional assets, whether that's in Kazakhstan or Pakistan or other areas, to make sure we retain that capability of having the potential of striking if something were to develop that threatened the United States.
Well, some, including your colleague, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, are concerned that the United States shouldn't be pulling out because of the dynamic we saw at play in Iraq. The power vacuum of a troop withdrawal, ISIS taking root. The concern is that something similar is going to happen in Afghanistan. I want you to listen to what he had to say.
Are there challenges? Of course. But you know what we haven't had in the last 20 years? We have not had a terrorist attack in the United States of America that was planned and executed out of Afghanistan. I think this sends the wrong message at the wrong time. And frankly, it's going to be, I fear, a repeat of what we saw in Iraq after the U.S. left. We only had to go back with a bigger force.
Congressman, what's your response?
I know people keep throwing out this Iraq talking point, but there is no factual similarity. The Iraq situation was caused because of the depathification of the Iraq government. We left, but we gave no role for certain factions to be part of a governing coalition. It would be as if we left Afghanistan and insisted that the Taliban had no role in governing Afghanistan. Quite the opposite is true. The Taliban now controls 70% of the territory, and President Biden is going to make sure that it's a coalition government in which the Taliban has a role. So the situations are totally not comparable.
It doesn't seem like the Taliban has the same desire when it comes to enforcing a certain kind of democracy. And one example of that is that women that are involved in these negotiations are concerned that the progress that Afghan women have made over 2 decades could be lost if U.S. forces leave before a long-term political solution is reached. How is the Biden administration addressing those concerns?
Well, there's no doubt the Taliban doesn't believe in liberal democracy or human rights, and we shouldn't be naive about that. But the Taliban has gained control since we've been there. They now control 70% of the territory, so we haven't been successful in warding them off. The second point is that women's groups are split. There was an op-ed in the New York Times by a leader of the Women for Afghanistan organization, and she made 2 important points. First, women and children currently are dying, as are many Afghan civilians, because of the ongoing war. So that is not helpful for women's rights. And second, the key point is an insistence that women leaders and groups are part of any negotiating process, part of the government, that those human rights are upheld by the international community. And that's what we will continue to do. But the idea that America can militarily go to places halfway around the world and create liberal democracy, I just don't think is possible. And that's the lesson that we've learned over the last 20 years.
Congressman, I want to pivot quickly to what the White House is calling an epidemic. President Biden speaking, of course, about gun violence in this country. According to CNN's count, more than 40 mass shootings across the country in just the last month. Given the gridlock on this issue in Congress, realistically, what could be done at a national level to address this?
Well, we need to act, and I'm glad that the president is insisting on that. I was encouraged that Senator Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, said that they will bring legislation to the Senate. As you know, the House has passed a number of provisions. The most important one, the basic one, is a universal background check. Shouldn't we be able to tell if a person has a criminal background history, if a person is likely to commit violence before they get to buy a gun? That seems so reasonable. The House has passed that. The Senate needs to take that up and vote on it. And it's also why we frankly need filibuster reform to protect voting rights, to have basic common sense gun violence legislation to tackle climate change.
Congressman Khanna, these are difficult issues. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you so much for having me.